entries, but we do have a couple of 2 driver entries. And confusingly, one of the driver entries that is a shared driver entry isn't going to be a shared driver entry today because the second driver is going to drive fully. Here is the grid for the race 2 then. 54 Bas Kutten Racing is on the pole position alongside 66. That is our winner, poleman and winner from yesterday. A good second faster than everybody else in qualifying, good half a second faster per lap in the race. Row 2 will be occupied by Max Wels and Fred Caprese. He was very fast in the first couple of laps yesterday, but did fade by the end. Row 3 is the 15 Bas Kutten Racing of Dick Warmerdam. He was very good yesterday, got himself onto the podium with Jaden Post alongside. And then we have our only Polish entry, Thomas Magaez in 7th, and Equipe Vecheur's number 8 machine number 24 machine, I should say, in 8th position. Albert Joachim and Charles Schwartzman sharing that car. Yes, that, Charles Schwartzman. Row 5 is Barry Van Elk alongside Giovanni Scamardi. He was the only man to retire in yesterday's race, so we'll be looking for a good result today. And then on row 6, we have the De Vries and De Looy car with the Belgian Racing National Auto Club car alongside them, racing in the Belgium Championship. We have a couple of different cups, trophies in this race. The Belgian Championship, just 3 cars, 2 from JJ Motorsport, and then that Belgian racing entry. And then the rest of the entries are racing in the Netherlands, or the Netherlands Cup, that would be correct. And then within those, there are a couple of trophy cars as well. So plenty to fight for. A very entertaining race yesterday, and it was Peter Snowden who joined me yesterday, and he does again today in the commentary box. Morning, Peter.
Morning, Ben. What a race it was yesterday. As you said, we got so wrapped up in everything that was going on 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th place, really. Certainly Fred Caprese, who said at the beginning of the race yesterday, a stellar performance, and really thought he was going to challenge. But the man, as you said, that just romped away, was yesterday's race winner and pole position today. We almost ignored him, didn't we, poor chap? Because he just did the job so well. He disappeared off. We had to sort of mind there is somebody actually leading this motor race because everything was going on behind. So, wonder if the same will happen today. Yeah,
I think we said he was about half a second a lap faster by the end. The gap was 27 seconds at the end of the race, and we did have a bit of a safety car at the start. So, did an incredible job just finding the best out of his BMW M2. These are all spec cars. They're all the same machine, so one make racing, although of course run by different teams means they'll extract the pace in different ways out of the cars. What we did see yesterday with the temperature as well was they were really struggling in the second half of the race with keeping the cars on the island.
Yeah, we noticed that quite a bit. Different, as you say, setups. Teams always have different interpretations of how to set a car up, and that's one of the things we absolutely love about one make racing is that you delivered a platform, a product, in this case a BMW. Essentially, it's all the same. There's always that bit in brackets, but are they? Because we know everybody's going to do things a different way. But it really is down to how a team sets a car up, how a driver drives the car. And we watched it yesterday where some of them were sort of squirrely under the brakes, almost like the front end didn't quite work as well as they would like it to. Nothing wrong with it. And some of them where the rear end was laying number 11s and coming out of corners and oversteering. And we were just like, I mean, they are, a 3-litre straight 6, rear-wheel drive, classic BMW sort of layout. But it was very, very interesting watching how different people were getting different things out of the car and on different issues, which you'd have thought that not one make series shouldn't be.
Absolutely, and these are effectively road vehicles that have been modified to go racing. They're very much a spec machine. And racing across the whole of Europe in different championships and different national championships. You'd also see them at the Nürburgring 24 Hours as a one-make celebrity race, which is going to be very exciting, celebrating 50 years of BMW this year at the Nordschleife. Rolling start, as we had yesterday. Safety car lights are off. Quite a decent pace from our pack as they come around the final 2 corners here at Hockenheim. Nicely bunched together. Watch out for Fred Caprese in 4th position. He was incredibly good on the start yesterday. He made up 4 places and found himself in second at turn 1. Maybe he'll do the same again. Nice long hold, and once again, he slots himself down the inside, and he's going to get boxed in here. Unfortunately, no space for Fred Caprese, even though he made a good start. Yaden Post looking down the inside to try and make a move further back. They all do get through, but it did look as though Fred Caprese would do the same thing as he did yesterday. Had the better start, but unfortunately cars pulling across his nose. He wasn't able to find space. He does make up 1 position into 3rd spot, and now giving the Meyer Van Riet machine lots of hassle for 2nd. Exactly what we saw yesterday, but by the end of the race, he's really struggled. We go car further back, and he's made contact with the wall. Sadly, slapped the wall, and that is our Polish driver, Tomasz Magares. That is exactly where we had a car off yesterday, and that's why we ended up in safety car conditions, facing a different direction today, but I'm afraid we might have the same issue as we had yesterday. What happened here, Peter? Cold tyres?
Looks like he just got a little bit too wide, didn't he? And actually, no, he didn't get wide at all. I think actually the problem was there was somebody on his extreme right on the outside, so he got on the gas a little bit tight to radius, got on the gas a little bit too soon. Obi said, cold tyres, rear-wheel drive. We saw lots of this happening yesterday, and he just couldn't quite catch it. And it just gently rotated round, missed the end of one of those hard walls, mercifully. And I'm sure at that point he was thinking, thank goodness, and oh, there's another wall. And unfortunately, did just lightly connect to that, enough to take it out of the race. But Fred Caprese there at the start, he said he'd be punchy. He was. I think almost, if anything, he showed his hand too soon.
Yeah. And
because he dived so down across to the right, everybody else, the 2 in front, just went, well, we'll close that door then.
Yes, exactly.
Almost kind of could have left it a little bit later down to there, but it's easy to say when we're watching from here. Little bit of a second-hand. Oh, there's some damage to the front right of that number 7 car. Hardly surprising.
It looks like
it looks like the wheel's gone. I think well, it's like it's gone forward. Actually, it's got massive caster on it. So I think it's broken the strut and moved it forward by the look of it.
Well, good effort from Tomasz to get that car off and out of harm's way, so we don't go safety car. That's really good, but he needs to be careful not to damage the car too much by bringing it back to the paddock. It may be worth just parking it in the back in one of the access roads. But he has got it going, but it did really slap the wall, both front and rear wheels on the right-hand side, and there is damage to the right front corner. It doesn't look too bad on the right rear, but the front kind of deforms quite nicely, and unfortunately that has damaged the suspension and steering. So Maxi Musend leads, as he did yesterday. 1.5 seconds is the gap over the start-finishing line for the first time. De Meyer and Van Riet machine in second position as Yaden Post comes down the inside a little bit further back, has to really get on the anchors to make sure he doesn't collect Dirk Warmerdam. That is for 6th position, and I think he's going to lose it again. Down the inside of Giovanni Scamardi, but unfortunately, because he had to get so hard on the brakes into the hairpin, the Italian driver just drove around the outside of him and took the place back again. Yellow flag now at turn 5, so unfortunately, it does seem as though Tomasz has got himself 1 corner later, but may well have to park it once more. As I said, Oostend leads Van Riet with Caprese in 3rd position, Max Wiels right behind him in 4th, and then Warmerdam, Scamardi, Post. Today we also have Dirk Van Elk in the race. He wasn't racing yesterday. His teammate Pim Van Riet did the full race yesterday. He's in an all-white machine at the back of the field and is a very influential fellow in the world of Dutch motorsport. Over the line, Maxi Musend leads. The gap now 2.5 seconds to the Meyer Van Riet machine with Caprese, Wiels, Warmerdam, Scamardi and Post. Then Barry Van Elk in 8th position, and the field has slightly spaced out further back with the Joachim Schwartzman car in 9th, and then Janis Brams in 10th position, Van Elk in 11th position, and then De Vries and De Looy, the final of our 12 runners now. Best Belgian driver is Giovanni Scamardi. No, sorry, Fred Caprese. Just those 2 fighting for the Belgian points. And there's a €70,000 prize pool for these guys. So, you know, they are racing for something pretty significant. Not often you get money for winning races. Peter Snowden's woken up. It's going to be entering next round.
I was going to say, Ben, no, you and I, come on.
Easy.
2 driver, job done.
Yeah.
Split it with you.
I feel as though
70,000, 7-0. I know you said it, but I'm just confirming.
Not for the race, for the championship.
All the same.
Yeah, still a decent chunk, isn't it?
Yes.
Might just about cover your budget.
Well, yeah. Let's not go there.
Yes, exactly.
Nice to see that in this day and age, because normally it's, back in the long time ago, sort of 40, 50 years ago, you used to have prize money.
Oh, you has entry money.
And start money and all
start
that.
Money,
you
yeah.
used to turn up and get the car onto the grid as a very minimum. If it was a wreck after qualifying, get it onto the grid, because if it took the start, and even if it just stopped immediately afterwards, you got the start money. And that all changed, obviously, to the late 60s, with particularly in Formula One type world of sponsorship and etc. and commercial sponsorship. And so it's good to see that that's very old school, I would say, and it's something to aim for at the end of the year. I'm not quite sure how much 70,000 euros will offset the cost of running a BMW for a whole season, but it's the thought. It's an incentive, it's a carrot, isn't it?
And that stems from horse racing, doesn't it? When we first went motor racing, the only model of racing before that was horse racing. And horse racing, you got start money because you have to, so much work to get the horse into the race. And so the same philosophy was applied, and we saw it for many, many years. Down the inside goes Giovanni Scamardi on Dirk Varmerdam. It doesn't actually happen at turn 2, and unfortunately he's going to compromise his speed all the way around the parabolica. Jayden Post doesn't look quite close enough to capitalise here, but the next big braking zone is the hairpin, and that would be where Jayden Post could, maybe, as we get to terminal velocity, have a chance here. Obviously these BMW M2s punching a nice big hole in the air for the opportunity to slipstream as well, and has provided us with great action throughout the field yesterday. But for the moment, Jayden, not close enough this time. And what we also saw, Peter, yesterday was if you did make an error in one corner, it does seem like there was a lot of momentum that was lost, and therefore you would find yourself under pressure from the car behind.
Pretty well the nature of the combination of this type of circuit. It's quite a momentum circuit, Hockenheim, in this format as it is now. And one make racing, where the cars, you say, are pretty well evenly matched. We did mention before different interpretations of teams and setup, and drivers. That's the style and fine tuning, but primarily you say it's a production car. They're all the same, so it gives one hand, takes with the other. You lose a little bit of time, and all of a sudden that can have a knock-on effect. It's cumulative. So that's why it's such a good skill set to learn for these drivers before they go off onto other racing and getting into GTs and Nürburgring and things you've said, where these classes can run as well. And it's part of the learning curve. It's learning the trade and getting the discipline.
Great amount of rotation from the car of Giovanni Scamardi. He's obviously got better tyres because he didn't use them yesterday because he was parked up on the side of the road after a little bit of lap 1 contact. But he is really using the rear end of that car to turn the front end. Whether that's going to be beneficial when it comes to the end of the race, having used perhaps more of his rear tyres. But he does. The cars, as we mentioned yesterday, they do look quite loose generally. They got looser in the second half of the race when temperatures started to increase, and we are seeing temperatures higher than yesterday here. Maybe not quite now, but they were particularly hot temperatures in the heat of the afternoon yesterday. You had air conditioning blasting in the comms box, but you were down in the pit lane, Peter, and it was a midsummer's day, really, wasn't it?
More than midsummer's, yes. It was certainly quite warm.
Oh, someone was
say something's facing the wrong way there. I just saw very, very briefly.
At the hairpin, who was it? It is 66 out of second position. The Meyer Van Riet machine, whether he was helped around by Caprese or not. Was there any contact? But either way, he has dropped to the tail of the field. It has been yes, look, the right rear mirror, lens on the glass of the rear brakes has broken, so that would suggest there was the lightest of contact. And as you know, Peter, as soon as you unsettle that rear end, it's quite hard to get it back again, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, it's irrelevant having indicators on the BMW anyway, so it doesn't really matter, does it? I'm going to pay for that one, aren't I, somewhere along the line?
We are commentating on BMW's YouTube channel.
I know.
Well, they had great pace yesterday. Do you remember, second half of yesterday's race, they had a penalty for a pit stop infringement, and they still managed to get themselves back into second position after a real storming drive in the second half of the race by what we think was Lorenzo Van Riet. We don't actually have official confirmation of who is in the car at what point for those two cars. There is the result of the spin, but we don't see what happens at the start of it. I wonder, I mean, it was obviously the lightest of touches, literally the lens is missing, and that's it, and it's just been removed, and there doesn't seem to be any other tyre marks or damage to the rear end of that car. Fred Caprese, second position now. No information as to whether the race control will look into it. They'll have security cameras around the circuit so that they have the ability to replay and monitor everything that's going on for security, of course, but also so that they can have a little bit of control over what's going on the racetrack. And you can see there is a little bit of debris down there, which is the remnants of the lens. You know, when you go to a crossroads and you see bits of red all over the ground and you know that somebody's been rear-ended there just a few moments ago, well, that's turn 6 hairpin at the moment.
Misjudged their braking distance.
Yes, exactly.
More economical on the brakes than required.
There is Fred Caprese, and just trying to see on the front end of his car whether there's any evidence of contact. As I said, it was obviously the lightest of touches, and to be honest, if it was a touch, it was on the left front, and it doesn't look really much like there's anything much of an issue there. But he is slow in comparison to what we saw yesterday. Max Viels right on his tail right now. This is for second position. Ultimately, they're not actually fighting in the same championship because Caprese is racing the Belgian championship, whereas Viels is in the Dutch championship, or the Netherlands championship. And so be interesting to see whether Fred decides to fight this one or decides just to let it go and maybe learn from what Max is doing. They are a little bit loose. So Fred was a bit loose all of yesterday. So there might be
I was going to say, no different to yesterday, was it? It was very, very strong. So I think punchy was the term we used the first couple of 3 laps yesterday. And we thought we were on for a real duking it out. And it seemed to fade. So it seemed to have a very early race pace, but not maintain it. And it is an hour-long race, which, as you said, I mean, these cars they are production-based. They have a little wing on the back, which obviously does something when we put there for no reason.
It's probably on the production car as well.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
No reason.
Exactly. But it's and I said not for no reason, but they are 90-odd% reliant on mechanical grip as opposed to aero grip.
Yeah.
There'll be a few things different to the road car, but most of that will be efficiency of cooling and brake ducts, etc., etc. Whereas they're not exactly an aerodynamically efficient car. So too much loud pedal, too much gas, too much throttle input, however you want to put, and the back will react accordingly.
As we saw, didn't we? Quite a lot
and
yesterday.
joyously. We were enjoying it, watching a little bit of drifting going on today, a bit of I always love the phrase counter-steer. And we use opposite lock as an English phrase, but counter-steer, I love this idea of counter-steering. You've got too much power and it's going the opposite way the commutator goes, you have to turn into it. We saw quite a lot of that yesterday, or drifting as it's known more universally now. So Fred Caprese, we can't see any damage on the front left of that car, and we have no actual evidence that he did touch the other car to turn it round, but it seemed perfectly logical that was the case. There's nothing particular. It might have just been, as Ben said, the lightest of touches, the lead car being just under braking, slightly destabilised. Caprese coming under in pressure now, coming through into the last hairpin, the big, it's not really the hairpin, it's the last big fast right-hander onto the pit straight. Caprese just coming under a little bit of pressure there of the 14 car right behind him. Max Viels literally right behind him to the point of 0.3 seconds across the line, but trying to dive down the inside. But you don't want to touch that car because it's just destabilised. That's exactly what happened to Caprese. It just got turned round.
I mean, we're calling him Caprese. There's no actual evidence that that's how you pronounce the name, but it looks pretty similar. So, Caprese could be also.
Could be Caprese, yeah.
Yeah. I'm afraid we've been on air too much and not enough time to go into the paddock and be able to introduce ourselves and get more au fait with this field. There is our leader, by the way, Maxime Hussein. We spoke to him yesterday, and he is, oh wow, a lot ahead of everybody else.
10 seconds.
Over 10 seconds after 15 minutes of racing. So actually his pace has increased over yesterday. There's not much stopping him, is there? Everyone else is a decent chunk off his pace. Best lap from him, a 50.7. Best lap from the rest of the field, a 51.7. So his best lap is 1 second faster, as we saw in qualifying. Maybe something to do with the fact that Fred Caprese is kind of the cork in the bottle here. Max Viels on his tail. Dirk van der Dam now coming up to catch that little battle, and Jaden Post and presumably Giovanni Scamardi is on the back of that group as well, because he's actually dropped behind Post. We didn't see the pass. We did see him trying, but that little threesome of Varmadan, Post and Scamardi has slightly changed. Oh, and very, very wide again from Fred Caprese, bouncing all over the curbs. That's surely going to give an opportunity for the number 14 Max Vils, as Dirk Van Elk has gone round. Oh, and Caprese comes into the pits.
Now, drive-through penalty for causing a collision, just up on the race control report there. So, unfortunately, as we said, we hadn't actually got evidence of it, but our suspicions were exactly right, Ben. He did have a little tap on that and turn the other car around. So, unfortunately, he's got to serve his drive-through penalty for that. Drops him right down the order.
And we saw this.
To do. An afternoon, a morning's worth of work to do now.
We saw it yesterday. Remember, we had some drive-through penalties. It costs you about 18 seconds, but it is recoverable, especially with 45 minutes to go. We might see a safety car. So not the end of the world for Fred, but what it will do is it will mean that he'll be pushing even harder and probably cooking those tyres even more. It's released Max Vils, it's released Dirk Varmadan, and straight away Vils does his fastest first sector to equal Max Hussen's pace right now. So obviously was feeling a little bit held up by Caprese. And now he can get his head down and try and close that gap to Maxime Husten. We do have just single driver entries in both the first, second, third, fourth and fifth cars. Anybody sharing is right down the back of the field.
Now, if he plays his cards right here, this could actually work into Caprese's hands. Not saying he'll get into necessarily the race lead. I think Max Hussen's got that sorted for the moment, particularly on yesterday's predictions. But we've mentioned already that this car of Fred Caprese isn't as quick much after 4 or 5 laps. You just had to serve a drive-through penalty. It will have cooled down a little bit for that. A little bit of a rub going on there. I think that was at the hairpin as well, was it?
Yes, that's down for 9th position between the car of Joachim Schwartzman and then Janssen and Brams, two driver pairings having a bit of a battle down there.
Just trading decals, weren't they?
Yeah.
Doing a sticker swap as they go through. Yeah, but Fred Caprese, if his car, if it's the same as yet, there's lots of ifs and variables here, always in motorsport, but if it follows the same pattern as yesterday, that it's not quite as quick from about a third of the race in, quarter of the race in, it's only 18 seconds through the pit lane. He might just have a bit of an advantage where he can get back up the field far easier than you think if he just doesn't take too much out of the tyres on that car. The thing here now is not to overdrive it if he can. Yeah,
let's see what he can do on his own. He does have, actually, he has the Meyer Van Riet machine ahead of him in 7th position. So Fred is down in 8th, and that number 66 car was second yesterday, was running second before it had its little spin. In fact, those are the two that made contact with each other. So rightly, the race direction penalty has done exactly what it's supposed to do. It's put Caprese behind the Meyer Van Riet car that he spun around. So that makes good sense. It's worked out well there. It's always worse when you have like
justice has been served.
Justice has properly been served, you know. Yeah. Whereas if you get a penalty, that still means you place ahead of the other car. It doesn't seem quite as fair, and but that has worked out very nicely. So Caprese's got a fast car in front of him to chase. The Meyer Van Riet machine doing a 52.3 last time. Which probably shouldn't have any damage, should it? Because it was really just the light cover that was missing. I'm sure there's no bent suspension or anything like that, and so those two should have good pace and be able to catch the guys in front as we continue to have a battle for 9th position. Equipe Vasseur in 9th with the Belgian racing team behind. They're actually in 2 separate trophies, the Netherlands trophy and the Belgian trophy, but either way, when you've got a car in front of you to play with, you play.
Yes, and drivers being drivers, Ben, you know only too well that I'm sure that Meyer Van Riet won't feel at all justified by that. It'll still be turned around. He'll still feel aggrieved because he won't let it go just yet. No. I'm sure he won't be sitting there driving around going, oh, well, he's behind me now, it doesn't matter.
I mean, it was considering the damage on the car, on both of the cars, it clearly was the tiniest of touches, and therefore, you know,
a kiss.
Yes, it was a kiss rather than a nail.
Exactly.
You know,
it wasn't a lunge that was sent down the inside. It was just, as you say, just a moment of misjudgment. It happens. It's racing. Race officials obviously see it as a punishable offence, and that's why it's had the drive-through penalty. So that's it. Race director's decision is final. it's been serviced. You say justice is done. That's been served, and just get on with it now. But we've still got 40 minutes of this race to go, so we're only a third distance. So there's a lot could happen yet.
Yeah, and especially with the way that the tyres reacted to the second half of the race and the way that some of these drivers are sliding their cars around, you really are going to want to try and look after your tyres. We're expecting 28 degrees today?
28, 29 for our feature race a little bit later on. Yes, the big race.
Yeah.
Times today, we have had a 150, I think, is the best. Yes, Maxime Houston has set a 150.7, but we were 149.5 for qualifying yesterday, which obviously was cooler, I'll grant you, in the morning when they did qualifying. We didn't see those times approach yesterday. They did drop down the order. They were sitting in the 51s quite comfy. So Maxime Houston slightly quicker today. And he now has, it seems 2 minutes ago we were saying it was a 10-second advantage. It's now a 16-second gap.
Massive. Won the race with a 23-second gap. We did have a bit of a safety car.
Let's not jinx it, though.
10, 15 minutes of safety car yesterday, I think?
Yeah, I believe, yeah, I'd say 10, 12 minutes, yes.
Yeah. But just banging in the lap times. It's like he's on a test session. Got no mates to play with. And obviously Hockenheimring Racing, a great team to be part of. So many opportunities. He'll go into the factory, the workshop, and just look around all the different cars that are on offer from Hockenheimring Racing. And if he impresses the bosses there, then you can find himself in all kinds of races and championships and vehicles. And so doing exactly what he needs to do here. I mean, even the way that the car looks on track, Peter, it doesn't look like he's even wringing the neck of the thing. Everyone else, you see, you go, oh, right, he's really on the limit of adhesion, isn't he? Whereas Usend is the fastest man on track every single lap, and it doesn't even look like he's really laying that car into the tarmac.
I dislike cliches, but I'm going to use one despite that now, but it does look planted, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does look very stable, very secure. Doesn't look it's struggling under anything. We mentioned earlier about some of the cars yesterday, notably a little bit of front end under the braking, a little bit of squirreling and squirming. Not massive lockups, but we were surprised. More to the point, what drew our attention to it was because it's a one-make series. The cars should all be within a window of performance together. Therefore, it's down to the drivers. But we were surprised at how different some were. Some front-end issues, some rear-end issues. We're talking fine details. But you say Maxime Houston, none of that. It just looks like it's on rails. You sure it's not a tram? It's on rails. There's not a wire above it and sort of just guiding it around on a tram.
We're still waiting to see the tram, aren't we, in Mannheim?
Yes.
There's tram lines, but there's no trams.
Well, there's lots of lines and lots of wires, but I haven't seen a tram yet. I feel denied. It was part of the German experience coming out. I wanted to see a tram.
When you're talking about setup of the cars affecting the way that the cars look on track, I'd also propose that because of their production cars, you have so much more of an effect as a driver. The way that you brake, the way that you accelerate, the way that you put any input into the car is accentuated because effectively the car is slightly softer than an all-out racer, and therefore the way you balance the car seems to be crucial with these machines.
Which is why one-make racing is such a good discipline, because it teaches you how to manage the car. You've got to work with the car and your team. And that's where the drivers that do that well and pull that off well, they will excel and move up to the next level. And that's why they get picked up and get to drive better things, because you learn those disciplines. Like any sector of industry, you learn the disciplines in the early days. But these are the ones that will become something like Maxime Houston on the basis this car's looking, say, incredibly planted, very easy. I'm seeing a potential, sort of GT driver there in the makings. Those are the disciplines that are required. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much it's about the driver. The driver is still the employee. They always say it's the loose nut behind the wheel, and they're still an employee. Whether it's a team like this where we are, where it's fun, family racing, or whether it's top level stuff, you're still an employee. You've still got a job to do, and you've got to drive the car according to the team. Because it's all well good being egotistical, which nobody here is being here, but saying I'm going to be a driver, I'm going to drive as fast as I can. If the car can't do it, you're going to break it, and the team, you're just going to be happy. They're going to find somebody else, and they always say that the most easily changed component on a racing car is the driver.
One thing I'm noticing about some of these cars we're watching a bit further down the pack is when we're talking about driver style. With Maxime Houston, the car didn't seem to dip, it didn't seem to dive, it didn't seem to roll. It seemed, as you said, very planted, but also he wasn't asking too much of it. Whereas some of these guys further back, we're watching Jaden Post at the moment, who is in 4th position. And he does seem to be leaning on the car a bit more. Oh, now, Maxime the Meyer Van Riet machine with a little bit of smoke on the left rear, which is interesting because it's the right rear that's got
yes,
the...
I wonder if he's got a slow punch on the left rear, Ben. Just first thought. Is it dropping down? Does it look like it's lowering on the left rear?
Well, he's got his indicator on, so maybe he does have a puncture. And is that puncture where he's run over his debris previously? These circuits get cleaned to the inch of their life overnight. We've only had one other race. It's either that or suspension. Suspension by the looks of things.
It's certainly looking low on the left rear. This is the 66 car, and it's definitely something happening.
I'm going to say that's suspension, which is very unusual, unless he's just walloped a curb. Yeah, because look how
there's a ride height issue there, isn't there? Because the left rear is certainly lower. So the wheel arch, it looks like the wheel arch is catching on the bodywork,
and that's
which suggests suspension, as you say, Ben.
But it's not something that you would expect to have happened from the contact. There's absolutely no bodywork contact from the earlier incident with Fred Caprese, but he now comes into the pits. He's also being followed in because the pit lane window is open, so everyone will now have to make a pit stop over the next 10-15 minutes. But I'm afraid it looks like the Meyer Van Riet car is not going any further. How that's happened is quite a surprise, I would say, because it's also the left rear of the car, and there doesn't seem to be that many big sausages to hit on the left rear, unless it is on the exit of some of our turns. That is where you can hit a sausage curb. And if you're, I suppose, Peter, if you're sliding and you hit a sausage curb laterally, it's not the same, it's not what the car is used to.
No, these components are designed to work in one or two directions only, because they're designed to be on track, not have outside influences, as you say, a sausage curb sending an impact back down the wheel to the suspension arm. It can break suspension arms or something. I'm just wondering here if it's an arm or a broken damper or something, because it's sitting low. It's right opposite our commentary box now, and they've all got out and had a looking around at that left rear, but certainly low. He didn't really need to slow down to the pit lane speed there, because it wasn't doing much more than 50k anyway.
Well, they've changed their driver as one of our two driver entries. They've put fuel in the car, and now they've put the car up on jacks. So the guys down at is it Baz Cooten Run? I think it is Baz Cooten Run. No, it's Swift Racing Events. And here's an example of what you were talking about earlier. Fantastic drift from Jaden Post. Huge drift, which we get a 6, 7, 8 in the if you were in a drift competition, which they have here at Hockenheim. This stadium section is perfect for a drift competition. But it does look as though the guys have given up down there, I'm afraid, with the 66. So we are going to see our second retirement. Such a great performance yesterday, so much speed from the 66. And I'm afraid there is something broken in the deep in the wheel arch, as we suggested. And William de Meyer.
It's broken spring. They're pulling out bits of the coil spring. So the spring's actually broken. So coil, and they're pulling parts of it out. So that's why it's altered the ride height, and I would hope it would.
Is that usual?
No, very, very rare.
Yeah.
It's a tempered steel coil that's obviously just it's brittle, or something's happened there. Again, it could be. I'm not suggesting it is, but if you've hit a sausage curve the wrong way, it resonates through. Maybe it's just done something. I'm not suggesting they have done that, but it's a possibility. Technically, malleable metal. It's just something's just broken. And but when they're pulling parts when they're bringing out three spirals of a coil spring, it's not an easy fix, is it?
Into the pits comes Jaden Post. We've been enjoying watching him. He's
only just. If you see that, he almost drifted into the pit entrance there, didn't he? It was very, very stylish.
We enjoyed him around the final corners last lap with his drift. He's done the same thing again. I would suggest to his teams that they have a look at the tyre pressures on that car and make sure that they are in the window, because I feel as though he might have been cooking those tyres over the last couple of laps with the way he's been driving. Just a reminder, Maxime Oustin leads. We've got Dirk Warmerdam in second right now, Jaden Post in third. That is because we have had some pit stops already.
Now, Warmerdam had a great run yesterday, weren't we? We mentioned about Fred Caprese, who's working his way back up the order. He was up to second, but dropped down to ninth after his drive-through penalty for the little tap earlier on. He's back up to fifth place now, but yet to pit. And, we mentioned Maxime Houston at the front doing a great job, exactly as he did yesterday. But Dirk Warmerdam did a fantastic job yesterday of charging up through the field, and he's in second place. But it's still these two yet to pit, as you say, 150.7 and 150.5. So Warmerdam slightly quicker overall at the moment, although his last lap was a 54.4 compared to Maxime Houston's 51. So I'm not quite sure why Warmerdam's last laps dropped so much.
Interesting that there's a little bit of bodywork damage on the left side of the rear of the BMW. So there was, I think, kind of nose-to-tail contact between the two of them. Now, Jaden Post has had quite a slow pit stop there for me. They refilled his water, but the guy who was at the front of the car had his thumb up for quite a long time, suggesting that the timer had elapsed, because obviously each pit stop has to last a certain amount of time due to the fact that some of these cars are driver entries and some of them are one driver entries. But it felt as though he had the thumbs up, but he wasn't moving. So let's see if Jaden Post does lose a little bit of time in the pits, so that one of his female team members, or perhaps wife slash girlfriend slash daughter, not the same thing, Peter, that would be awful. I'm suggesting I just didn't know which of the various partnerships she was.
I wasn't even going there. I was just interested in the possibilities of the female options you had in terms of drivers there. But
could be all. It could be any of them.
Maxime Houston, I think, has just left. He's in the pit. He's just out.
Caprese came flying into the pits there and nearly took out the driver of the car in front. Now parked up with a little bit of damage. We can see now he's stationary on his rather flamboyant livery on the right front corner. So he made right front to rear left contact with the Meyer Van Riet car when we saw that accident happen. Either way, what I was trying to say was the door was opened for Jaden Post and water was being given to him. We haven't seen that with any other drivers. So either the water system has failed in that car, because you obviously can happily carry a Camelback and you would want to keep sipping on cold water or lukewarm water, depending on your system. But it didn't look as though that they were replacing a canister or anything. It was very much a plastic bottle of water to give to Jaden Post to try and keep him concentrated, because we have seen a couple of leery moments from the white, grey and bright yellow machine as we continue to get our pit stops out the way. We have just under half the race still remaining. Dirk Van Elk, I think, is going to be the last of our pit stoppers. And then we can get back to racing again and work out where everybody is.
I may have missed you saying it, Ben, but 12th place now in the pits is the Meyer Van Riet car. I'm not quite sure why that's been in the pits for 3 laps. That's the one we didn't got the wrong number. My apologies.
Yeah, that's the suspension failure on the
talked about the car and forgot the
number.
Didn't make the association with the number.
Yeah. So just to
ignore me, listen to Ben. It's wise advice.
We've lost that car, the number 66, and we've also lost the Polish entry, number 7, Thomas Magares, around the back of the circuit. Eventually, he slapped the wall at turn 3, but got himself down to the hairpin, the furthest part away from the paddock area before having to park up. So had either a decent walk back to the paddock, or he'll be sitting with his car waiting for the tow truck to recover him back to the paddock later on. Big old slide from 74 as he comes around the Mercedes arena. That is Jaden Post, is it? No, it's not Jaden Post. It's not 74 then. It is 14, Max Fils. Oh, well, we've got Peter Snowden in the commentary box. We've got Chris Dawes down in the pit lane.
Yeah, good morning, guys. I was trying to speak earlier and we realised that I wasn't working. I just thought you were ignoring me.
You weren't working, no, you're right.
I'm back now, but I caught up with the driver of the 66, well, the driver that started it, Willem Meyer, and unbelievably, he was hit very hard twice by the same car. He's not a happy guy. The drive-through was served for the big hit at the beginning that span him round. Then, of course, he got the drive-through that put him behind the 66 car again. And he says, I only assume that he outbraked himself, hit him really hard in the rear, and snapped the suspension. So, not a happy driver.
I mean, the light was still intact, so it couldn't have been that hard.
Well, that's the original hit on the right-hand side that's turned the car around. What Chris just said is by the same driver. So
On the left-hand side.
On the left-hand side, it's broken the suspension.
Yeah, but the light's not even broken on the left-hand side.
No, its bodywork's lower. So it's obviously hit it more on the wheel, which is more of a direct impact on the suspension. I'm surprised it's broken a coil spring. I would suggest it's actually the impact has broken something else within the suspension, and cause and effect that's then done, caused the coil to break as it's driven round. So cause and effect. As we said yesterday on sort of the GT race as well, there's always more to these things. What looks like a superficial tap or whatever, it always ends up being more. There's always something else. It's hence the general phrase, it'll polish out. Very rarely does it. It's sort of done. It's done in brackets. It'll polish out. It's a quotation. It won't.
Well, Fred Caprese then the bad boy of the M2 CS Racing Cup Benelux Race 2 here at Hockenheim, down in 7th position, but very much sounds as though he is the reason why the Meyer Van Riet number 66 car is out, and after yesterday's performance, finishing second, that is a real disappointment to be out and scoring no points. I'm guessing that Charles Voltzmann is aboard the 24 machine, because that's setting faster lap times that it has managed previously. So let's watch out for the 24 as it tries to get itself back up through the field. 37 seconds the gap between it and Fred Caprese in 7th position, so work to do. Probably unlikely to be able to catch that much of a gap, especially with these cars being so equal. But great to have Charles Voltzmann in this field. We've got cars coming over the line, and Max Wiels has got ahead of Dirk Warmerdam. Now the gap 2.3 seconds. That changed on the last lap. Now, whether that is just a result of the pit stops, or we did see, no, that's the first lap out the pits for Warmerdam. So I think that's correct. I think that's how it was before the pit stops. Oosten leads, 26 seconds is the gap. Wiels in 2nd position, 2.3 ahead of Warmerdam. Jaden Post, 2.7 seconds back from that. And then Giovanni Scamardi, 2.5 seconds with that, with Barry Van Elk joining the party now in 6th position. So a nice little queue of cars forming behind Max Wiels, not cars that are particularly close to each other and therefore perhaps gaining big slipstreams. But if anybody makes a mistake, 2.3 seconds is an easy loss, and we could see some exciting battling again.
Yeah, I was trying to look on the progress of Fred Caprese, if that's how we pronounce it, given the involvements with the 66 Meyer Van Riet car. Interestingly enough, there was a message from race control a few moments ago, or a few minutes ago now, of the team manager must report to race control immediately, but it was for the 66 entry, the Meyer Van Riet car. Their team manager being required to go to the race control, so I guess possibly to explain the situation, to see what's happened, because I'm sure that obviously there'll be CCTV all the way around to see what's gone there. But interesting what's going to develop on that one. I'm going to keep an eye on that one. So I think we may see a little bit of a change here, yes, with Fred Caprese. He's in 7th at the moment, and we've just got just over 20 minutes to go. In fact, just under 23 minutes to go. So the final third of this race may yet offer some rich pickings. Not for Maxime Oosten at the moment, though. He's leading imperiously. 19 laps completed. Back into the 152.4s straight away again. His fastest lap of the race is the fastest lap of the race, a 150.7. And currently has a 28-second advantage over Max Wiels, and I think it was a 26-second win yesterday, wasn't it? Thereabouts. So it's pretty well repeating itself. As you say, we noticed earlier that, as Ben said, it got quite, and I think it got 10 seconds advantage in first 15 minutes of the race, I think we said. So he's certainly on it, isn't he?
On it and yet not, because it just doesn't look like he's on it.
Well, yes, doesn't, yeah, but isn't that always a way just to win the race at the slowest possible pace and least stress on the car? And that seems to Maxime Oosten seems to have aced that so far. So let's not jinx it. I'll stop there.
So not only does Maxime Oosten represent Baz Kooten Racing, he also represents the dealer Erikis, as you can see, Ekris on the car. 3 drivers representing that dealer, with Max Wiels and the Schwarzman Jochems car also sporting that dealer alongside it. But Baz Kooten Racing running the car very, very nicely. and Bas Kooten also running. How many cars have they got in this? Just the 2, I think. But it is Warmerdam in 3rd and Usain in the lead of the race. That is run by Bas Kooten. We now turn our attention to the Janssen and Brams machine down in 9th position. It's just at its fastest lap of the race. So second driver slightly faster than the first. They're 12 seconds back from the Joachim and Schwartzman car. And actually that lap was still slower than the car in front. So we expect that gap to grow over the next couple of laps. Lap time starting to fade. Best lap of the race still that 50.7 from Maxim Usain at the start of the race, on lap 3 in fact, whereas now he is 1.5 seconds slower than that per lap.
Now the gaps, we just mentioned the gap at the front, didn't we, Ben, of 28, now 29.9, call it 30 seconds at the front for Maxime Usain, but second, third, fourth and fifth, we are talking 3 seconds, 2.8, 1.9, 1.8 and 3.8, all the way down to Fred Caprese in 7th place. So it's quite close after Max Usain. It's a bit of a repeat of yesterday.
Yeah,
so far.
Max Fields in 2nd position has slightly stretched his advantage over Dirk Warmerdam on that last lap. Warmerdam in the 54s, whereas Fields still in the 53s. But Scamardi and Barry Van Elk, the last 2 of that group, are faster than Post and Warmerdam ahead. So expect that to concertina up just a little bit. It's probably not close enough to kind of look close on television, if that makes sense. But it's certainly, at the speeds that these guys are going, it is relatively close, and it's that kind of frustration, as you well know, Peter, when you're in a race car and you can see the guy in front, but the gaps are just changing by tenths of a second, not tens of a second per lap, and so not quite in fighting distance quite yet.
No, this is always part of the problem of the psychology of racing or driving a race car, is not to let the emotion take over and instinct, and to sit with the discipline, remember the discipline, always come back to the metronomic discipline, certainly metronomic of driving a circuit, of you're wanting to make those gains, but you can't, but you can then make the mistake of over-driving it and making it far worse, and it wears the car out, it wears you out, and it's just self-defeating. You end up taking 1 step back, and sorry, 1 step forward. You're trying to take 1 step forward, you take 2 steps back, and it just isn't worth it. Again, back to discipline.
It looks as though these cars also are very susceptible to being overdriven.
Yeah, I think again that's largely because, as you've said at the beginning of this race, they are largely a road-based car. It's a very nice little piece of car, and I'd love to go and have a drive on one of those. I'm sure you would, Ben. It's a cracking little car. I mean, the product from BMW in the first place you can go and buy on the road is a cracking little car. But in race trim, it's mostly a road car components with a few upgrades. Obviously, all the safety stuff goes without saying, but different anti-roll bars, brakes, suspension. Obviously, they're running on slick tyres, but it is still, as you say, pretty well a loose road car. So it is susceptible to. It hasn't got aero. We've mentioned this already. It's mechanical. So if you overdrive it, it will react and it'll bite back. Whereas with a bigger GT car like a GT4 or GT3 car, certainly, you're going to have so much more reliance on aerodynamics, whereas the car will be more forgiving to that point. The envelope will get more, but the problem with that is these cars, if they get a little bit loose, you can catch it and correct it. It's really quite easy. It's kind. It'll kind of send you a little message saying don't do that. Whereas a more aerodynamic dependent car, and certainly when we get into LMP cars, the threshold is far, far higher, but the tipping point is instant. You get that wrong, it's over.
But I love...
As if you're facing the wrong way.
Yeah. But
minimum.
From a viewer point of view, it's so good to see cars moving about, isn't it?
It is.
You can see what the driver is actually having to do to keep the car on the road, or in the case
not
of...
in the case of the car going through turn 1 there. Absolutely not on the road.
Well,
nearly off in the grandstands.
Max Vils going down the inside of Dick Van Elk to put a lap on him, but of course that meant completely off the the correct racing line through what is quite a fast first corner there. And as soon as you start your line wrong, you end your line wrong, and that wrong was quite a long way into the runoff area, which of course is massively tarmac here, so no harm done.
One of the things I love about, I mean, I love LMP cars, don't get me wrong. It's the ultimate iteration to me of a racing car. I've never been a single-seater Formula Man. I respect it and understand it, but I've always loved endurance racing because of the nature of the race, the canvas we play on. But one of the things that's always drawn me to GT cars is, whilst they may be extremely modified, I was looking at the Phoenix Audi yesterday, we're going to see later on, it's got an Audi badge on it, effectively. It's actually a race car. We've got the opposite here. These are cars that you can relate to, the public can see it. They can go and buy that. Yeah. They can go and buy a version, they can go buy that car if they want to. But that's one of the things I love about GT cars. It's relatable to the public. The man on the street can see it. We'll see the Phoenix Audi, the CP Racing Mercedes later. They've got all sorts of carbon and bits on them and aerodynamic efficiencies and whatever, but it still looks like a Mercedes, an Audi, a BMW, a Lamborghini, whichever product it is. It's still relatable to us. You can see, oh yeah, I can go and see that car, and that's what I love about them.
In about an hour's time, we'll have the Supercar Challenge here at Hockenheim. You'll be able to go onto their YouTube channel to follow the action of that, and then a bit later on at 1:50 local time, we'll be back on air for the resumption of the 12 hours of Hockenheim. Another 5 hours and 55 minutes remaining of that race, and if you're not familiar with the 12-hour format, it is a 12-hour race, but they have a break for sleeping in the middle. So we did 6 hours and 5 minutes yesterday. We'll do 5 hours and 55 today, with effectively a red flag in the middle of it.
How very considerate being allowed to sleep during an endurance race.
Well, that's exactly what it is, isn't it?
Wasn't like that in my day, Ben.
Well, no, but, you know, you don't want to be tired, especially if all these gentlemen drivers have got to go to work on Monday.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Tired drivers make mistakes,
and tired drivers are grumpy on Monday as well.
Well, drivers tend to be grumpy at the best of times because they're always wanting a bit more.
This is true.
Was that the perfect lap? No. And you should get this whole thing back. It looked fantastic, and I know there's a whole load of reasons why it wasn't. Yeah.
This is the flyaway race for the BMW M2 CS Racing Cup. It's not really a flyaway because it's just over the border from Benelux, but the rest of their season will be taking part in Assen, Zolder, Spa, Francorchamps, and of course Zandvoort. Considering how small Holland is as a country, they have some amazing racetracks, don't they? You wouldn't say no to any of those racetracks to go and participate in.
No, and I do want to drive the new Zandvoort with the
banking.
A bit of banking at that Zandvoort. The old one, yes, but the new one looks fantastic.
Well, we've had a change.
And of course, a surge in motorsport interest, I guess, in Holland at the moment.
I mean, there was always a lot of interest in motorsport anyway. I mean, even Dakar trucks, they absolutely adore. It's one of the Dakar's biggest markets, Holland. There is Jaden Post once again giving it the full beans. That is in pursuit of Giovanni Scamardi, who has actually just got past him on this last lap. We haven't seen the change. Presumably happened down at the hairpin, and now we're getting Jaden back into his form that he's been in all day, which is
beautifully controlled throttle oversteer on the way out there. That was almost rally style, to tarmac stage on a rally, wasn't it?
I haven't checked the regulations, but maybe there is a award for best drift, because he seems to be laying down.
He's got it from us already.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, every corner now that rear end is stepping out. It doesn't look much. It doesn't look fast, but it does look fun, and it has allowed Scamardi up into fourth, Post down to fifth, Barry Van Elk in sixth, and now guess who's on the tail of this group? Fred Caprese is there. He's done a great job in this second half of the race to get himself onto the tail of this group, which is basically a battle for second. We could see Caprese back on the podium after all of his misdemeanors.
I think that's a stretched optimistic there to get quite onto the podium at 7th place at the moment.
He's 9 seconds back from second.
It's a long way. It's possible.
There he goes. One position gained to Caprese down the inside of Barry Van Elk at the hairpin. Done cleanly. Van Elk back up the inside. He's got the inside line.
Done the cutback, hasn't he?
Yeah, and the circuit does go right for the next corner. He has the inside line, heavy on the brakes, no point. Why would you do a half-ass move like that? It just slows the two of you down. Oh, we've got, no, that's Dick Van Elk getting out the way of this group of cars, making sure he doesn't compromise anybody too much. Oh, right on the
racing line, sitting on the apex, probably not the base, but trying to do the best will in the world, keeping out of the way and then getting completely in in the way.
Finding himself on the apex as Barry Van Elk comes around the outside of him. So
He found the apex.
But why Caprese and Barry Van Elk decided to do that? That's just crazy, because it's an absolutely flat-out right-hand turn when you're on your own on the racing line. As soon as you go side by side with each other, you're going to have to back out the throttle massively, and you're going to lose chunks of time, lap time, to the rest of the guys that you're battling with.
Because somebody's got to acquiesce. It's the cars don't just disappear.
But just be sensible about it.
Yeah, work together.
Work together. If you're not going to make the move stick, then just do it cleanly another time. That was my advice from my father. Because if you just go half...
And here we are commentating about it.
Yeah, exactly. A half move never works. Caprese was a bit slow through the complex at the end of the lap. Barry Van Elk got back onto the tail of him, but now through turn one, much better through turn one. Caprese's been doing rallying the last couple of years in France, and I do feel as though the way that these cars react with a bit of sliding around, he doesn't seem too spooked by it. You know, we see him at the start of the race really good in the first 2 laps when the tyres are cold, and he's still pretty good when the car's moving around a lot, and he's carved his way past Barry Van Elk. He's now drawing onto the tail of Jaden Post. He can easily clear, I would say, Post and Scamardi. And then I'll grant you, it's going to be a bit harder to get onto the tail of Dirk Warmerdam, but we still have 10 minutes remaining. And race control now watching him as he dips all 4 wheels off the racetrack. So be careful.
Your point about rally drivers there is that historically experience shows us that
Jaden Post.
Rally drivers usually make very capable race drivers without the bat of an eyelid. The opposite way doesn't always work.
No.
Because, as you said, some drivers just aren't comfortable with the car being loose and whatever. Whereas a rally driver, it's part of the DNA. You have to. Or if you're not happy with the car being loose, you're not going to be a very good rally driver. As I said, hence it's a tarmac stage, because they, gravel, snow, tarmac. To them, a circuit is just a tarmac stage.
I think it applies generally. But I think, as we're seeing with Sébastien Ogier in LMP2 this year, when you start getting thrown into a sports car with lots of downforce and almost a single-seater mentality of driving, Ogier is really struggling to get into that mentality, because you don't want to be sliding an LMP car. Both Jaden Post and Caprese going very wide through the final turn. To the inside comes Ferry Van Elk, but decides against going side by side into turn one. Caprese's got himself up ahead of Jaden Post, who was very messy on that last lap. So Caprese up to 5th now. Next target is Scamardi, who is only 1.4 up the road, but all this battling has allowed Dirk Warmerdam and Max Vils to get away from them.
Yes, and that we mentioned earlier, didn't we, that convincing win from Maxime Ouston. Let's not say that's going to happen yet, because there's 8 minutes 30 remaining, but he did win yesterday by 26 seconds, I think, off the top of our head, if we recall it. And you did comment very early on, Ben, that 15 minutes into this race, he'd already established something like a 10-second lead. It was even greater performance than yesterday. At the moment, all things being equal, if this carries on, he is just over 40 seconds into the lead now. Well, that's his advantage over second place Max Vils. The battle there, though, that's where it gets really interesting. 3.5 seconds, you say, to third place Dirk Warmerdam. But the battle is Fred Caprese is in 5th, and he's only 1.4 seconds off Giovanni Scamardi. So it is possible to get. I think it could do 4th. I don't think the podium is possible. You never know.
I'm going to put money. I'm going to not put money. I'm going to put some chocolate on a third place from Caprese. Jaden Post, in the meantime, incredibly loose around the circuit. He's been loose all day, he's been sideways, he's been drifting, and now his front end is starting to give away the apexes as well. He can't get the car into the apexes. He's losing time, and he's under pressure from Barry Van Elk for 6th position. And I think by the end we might see that change hands. He's holding on, but there's a lot of errors coming into his driving, and again hugely sideways through the penultimate turn and then into the final turn. He's turning that car with the rear. He doesn't have any front end, and he's just relying upon the rear of the car to get the car pointing in the right direction and follow the line of the track.
and doing a good job of it. It's a bit of a handful.
It is a handful.
But he is dealing with it.
But how much is that him doing that, and how much is the car?
Exact cause and effect.
Yeah.
Which is it? You know, it's all very well good, and that's the sort of conversation you'd love to be on the fly on the wall with the team afterwards, because there is not saying this is going to happen in this particular case, but we've had experience with this in the past where the driver says the car's awful, it's doing this, it's doing that, whatever, and then the technicians, the ones that know what's happening, will just go, yeah, but you're causing that.
Yeah,
that's very humbling when that happens to you, because you try and do this whole thing of like, it's oversteer, it's doing this, I can't drive it. Why did he give me a car like that? And they said, well, nothing wrong with the car, it's the way you're driving it.
A very long time
it's called
ago,
a leveler. Leveling up.
A very long time ago, I was part of the Jordan Grand Prix team. It was that long ago, it was still called Jordan, and they had an Italian driver called Giorgio Pantano, who had a huge shunt at turn 1 at Monza. And that weekend I was working with the engineers looking at telemetry, and he said, oh, the car snapped on me when I put my foot on the brakes going into turn 1, because the car basically rotated and spun across the chicane and had a massive accident. Lucky not to take out anyone else. We looked at the telemetry, and he was doing what you used to do in karting. He was a very, very good karter. He was hitting the brakes and just putting a little bit of steering lock in to get the car sideways, because back in the old karting days, to
set it, yeah.
The most efficient way was load it up and almost slide into the corner. He was doing that in a Formula 1 car, and you could only see that from the telemetry, from the input that he was putting in the steering. But he was blaming the car, saying the car was snapping on me. It's like, no. It's the steering, can you see? And then there's no argument there.
But the consequences of that are a massive bill to repair that car.
Yeah.
On the basis everybody's okay, that's fine. You know, the driver's okay, that's the most important thing. But a massive bill then, and the commercial consequences of that. Plus then you go, it's a Grand Prix, it's Monza, you've got sponsors, hospitality, everything there, and then they've got to have this car rebuilt. Can you get the car out? Have you got spares? And this is where there's always so much more to a backstory. There's only so many more layers to what you say. Is quite simply, he's driving it as he was thinking it's a kart, but it's a Formula 1 car, and you've got to recalibrate.
You do, exactly. Jaden Post making a right mess of turn 2, losing a position to Barry Van Elk, and so that is a change for 6th position once again. And my internet has gone off, which means I don't have any timing.
What do you need to know? We've got it all on this side.
Okay.
I'm right next to you. I'm your wingman. What do you need to know, Ben?
That's all right. We're good. We'll get it restarted. There we go. That didn't take very long. Barry Van Elk now.
So basically, just creating a bit of drama there, weren't you, for yourself?
Just a bit of drama for myself, yeah. I can see just ahead that Caprese is on the tail of Scamardi. Very, very close between the two of them. We might see a change before the end of this race for 4th spot, but it's taken too long, hasn't it, for Caprese to get past Scamardi. We've got a yellow flag. Oh, and a car facing the wrong direction at turn 9. Who was that we just flicked through the shot of? Caprese now behind Jaden Post. So it must have been contact between Caprese and Scamardi as he tried to make a move into the Mercedes arena.
Oh, not again.
Let's just see what happens at the end of the lap in terms of the where everyone is placed, and if we are missing anybody. Scamardi, I think, might still be ahead. Over the line comes Maxime Usend, or actually he's already over the line a long time ago. Vils in 2nd position, Varmadam in 3rd position. 2.8 is the gap now. And then it is Scamardi who is still in 4th position, 5.5 back. It was actually not particularly slow lap. Barry Van Elk makes a big mistake over the line, and therefore Jaden Post comes past, and Fred Caprese is behind the two of them. So Caprese has failed in his attempt to get past Scamardi somewhere, rotated the car, loses 2 positions, and means that potentially we've got some more entertainment for the next 3 minutes.
Yeah, because we've had Caprese's had a couple of incidents already. We've heard that from Mayor Van Riet, the 66 car that's been taken out and into the pits because of that damage. That's a huge off. That is Rally Star 4. That's 74.
Jaden Post.
Jaden Post again. I mean,
he's still off.
He's still on the grass. He still hasn't got it quite straight. It's fighting it. He's got some more grass to get over. Finally, he's found some of the grey stuff and got it back again. And that was I mean, that was one of the longest. That was genuinely like watching rallycross, wasn't it? Rallycross being a mixture of tarmac and off-road, just in case you're not aware of it, not as opposed to pure rally. That was fantastic. Jayden Post there. We got to see into the car there from the overhead shot, and you could just see the amount of arm work going on. He virtually got it from lock to lock, left to right, to trying to keep that thing straight. But great job from Jayden Post there, and I've got to say, round of applause, hats off. All the other attributes for getting that through, the accolades for getting that through there. That was extraordinary.
He's been absolutely spectacular in this car all day long. So turn 3, he's got a snap of oversteer because he's off the racing line, and then he runs off on the outside of turn 3, which is also the outside of the parabolica. So he wants to get back onto the track by turning left, but the circuit is also turning left away from him. So he can't get back on, he can't get back on. Eventually he finds enough tarmac to actually get the front wheels to steer, and he gets back onto the track.
But just watching the replay there again, we know what he did. He didn't lift.
He didn't
that
lift.
was the point. Had he just lifted a little bit, it would have all come back into line, but he's kept his foot in. Utter commitment from Jayden Post there, but I can catch this. Can I? Can't I? Can I? I've got it. No, I haven't. And it's got on far too long for my comfort. And then finally has caught it. So great job from Jayden Post there.
Mistake from Benelux. So Fred Caprese goes all the way around the outside, using the runoff at turn 1 to get himself back up into the position that he was just a couple of laps ago. But Barry Van Elk in the inside into turn 3 should hold on to this position for the moment, but we'll have a switch back probably, because Barry Van Elk was completely on the wrong racing line and still is on the wrong racing line. Rear end starts to snap away like we saw from Jayden Post last time, and Barry Van Elk holds on, in fact, to Fred Caprese for the moment, but Caprese is going to be hard on the brakes into the hairpin, and surely that's going to be a change of position by the end, as Maxime Hussein now comes over the line to start his last lap with a 47-second advantage. Another masterclass in how to pedal these cars fast from Maxime Hussein. He hasn't been troubled all weekend.
I tell you what, if Jayden Post's little excursion there isn't part of the highlights package for this show, I do not know what you've got to do to be in that highlights show. That was extraordinary.
That's going to join the balloon as my favourite moments of the weekend.
I think had the balloon been there, it would have been murdered by now.
Yeah, the balloon would have died, yeah, absolutely. Barry Van Elk.
Still, we've got a spare pack for later on. That's good.
Barry Van Elk trying to get past Fred Caprese. So Caprese gets past at the hairpin, but you know, as soon as you're compromised, as soon as you're off the racing line, you're slower, and it does mean that Barry Van Elk right on the tail and right under the rear wing of Caprese through the final sector of the lap. Would you believe that Jayden Post is drawing onto the tail of this little battle once more, despite the fact that he's had a massive grassy moment? Caprese turns in too early in the first part. That's going to put him off the line in the second part, and Barry Van Elk much faster through the second part of the last corner. Gets onto the tail of Fred Caprese, has the momentum, but actually not quite enough overlap to get down the inside of turn 1. And actually, Barry Van Elk's been doing this kind of Scandinavian flick through there the last couple of laps, because he started in the middle of the track. He's drawn the car to the left and then instantly thrown it into the right, the fast right-hand turner at turn 1, and somehow made it work. Very late dive down the inside at turn 2, but not quite enough of an overlap, and the battle continues and continues to get Jayden Post involved.
Well, Jayden Post for super commitment, don't get there, but you say Fred Caprese there, just as you say, just got it wrong on the first bit, and that just cost him not only the middle bit, but also exit speed.
Over the line then comes Maxime Hussein, and is a perfect weekend for the Dutchman. Pole position by a second, and he wins by being nearly a second fast per lap, or second fast per minute around this circuit. It's been absolutely incredible today, and Hussein, we still wait for the rest of the field to come and take the checkered flag.
I'm going to say, can Maxime say in his post-race interview, would somebody like to come and race me?
Yes, I know. So he does need a bit of competition.
I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but he has just aced it, has he not?
Oh, Caprese's gone wide of the Mercedes-Benz arena, and he goes side by side with Barry Van Elk. They both run each other off the circuit. Barry Van Elk's going to have very, very dirty tyres when he throws it into the stadium section in a few moments' time. In fact, looks like he might have picked up a puncture. He's going very slowly into the stadium, and Jayden Post comes past him. That's a shame. Oh, Fred Caprese is going to be the bad boy of the paddock, isn't he? He's already upset a couple of people, and now I think by running so wide, Barry Van Elk's picked up some issue with his car. And actually,
he's actually pulled it off at the Sachs curve.
Not going to finish the race.
He pulled it off on the inside, Ben.
Keep it going, keep it going. You've only got a couple of corners to go. Oh, no. Disappointment. I mean, he's in a safe position, so no issues there, but just a couple of corners. Wouldn't even need to take the racing track. He could have taken the rallycross track and shortened his route to the flag.
He must have done it for a reason, Ben. He's parked it completely out of the way safely, chosen a safe place to get to, quite rightly, so there must be some reason. He's in the car, he knows more about it than we do, but there's nothing evident on it, but he, as you say, normally the instinct would be a couple of corners, get it to the end, must have a reason for it. What a shame, though.
Great entertainment from him throughout the whole race. But firstly, his battle with Jayden Post, and then with Fred Caprese. If we had a Spirit of Race award in our M2 CS Racing Cup, then it would certainly go to him, because we've really enjoyed watching Barry Van Elk battle with Jayden Post. Although Post would actually probably have a good application, and Maxime Hussein finally drifts the car coming into the stadium section, finally gets the car sideways in celebration rather than in an attempt to keep the car on track, but he thoroughly deserves to get that car sideways, because he's driven it so beautifully throughout the other 55 minutes yeah. And
Barry Van Elk has actually brought the 73 car a little bit further round there, and I can't see any damage on that side of it, Ben.
Here are the results then. Baz Kooten Racing's 54, Max Hussein does the double here at Hockenheim for rounds 3 and 4 of the M2 CS Racing Cup, with Max Vils 53 seconds back in the end. Dirk Warmerdam will complete the podium in 3rd spot. He was just 1.5 back in the end from Vils. Camardi in 4th position had a late attack from Fred Caprese, but held it off. Caprese ends up in 5th after being the bad boy of the day, and then Jayden Post being the entertainer of the day in 6th position. The Joachim and Schwartzman car finishes 7th, with Barry Van Elk retiring out of the race, but still finishing 8th, thanks to the fact that Janssen and Brams, De Vriend and De Leeuwen, Van Elk and Van Riet were all 1 lap down. And we did have 2 retirements, I'm afraid. The number 66 Mayer Van Riet machine with damage to the rear left corner and assaulted apparently more than once on its rear end. Thomas Magares, the Polish driver, slapping the wall at turn 3 on lap 1, and I'm afraid we didn't see any further partaking of him.
Now, Ben, sorry.
That's it for our racing here from the M2 CS Racing Cup. A big thank you to Peter Snowden alongside me, and to Chris Dawes down in pit lane. And you can see the next rounds of the championship in Zolder, the weekend of Le Mans, the 10th to the 12th of June 2022. What a place to go racing. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
mal, wie das meiste Stück in Sachen Effizienz